I-24 News Morning Edition on this December 30th, 2015. Thank you for joining us. Iran, we're staying in the region. The Iranian deal seems to be underway, in practice at least. In one of the first landmark moves, the Islamic Republic sent a huge shipment of low-enriched uranium on a Russian ship to Moscow, marking a key step in enacting the historic accord. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry hailed it as a significant progress, with the State Department claiming the shipment constitutes almost all, to quote them, of the country's current stockpile. According to the nuclear deal, Iran must cut the reserves to less than 300 kilograms by implementation day, a day that could come as early as January 2016, according to IAEA. Now, if verified, the West is supposed to lift sanctions that have been crippling the Iranian economy for decades. But recent stirrings in Washington indicate efforts to try and prevent sanctions from expiring. According to a report in The Hill, Republican lawmakers want Iran's Sanctions Act to remain in place past its 2016 expiration date, so to speak. So, has Iran been left too little fuel to manufacture a nuclear weapon? Will sanctions be lifted in return? To discuss this, I'm very glad to be joined in studio by a woman who will always, question this, and that is Emily Landau, the director of the Arms Control and Regional Security Program at the INSS. Thank you for being with me. Of course, with us also Ruthie Sinai, I-24 News senior editor.
Good morning.
Good morning. Before we break it down, let's take a look at the following report and see where we stand with Iran.
The United States has said Iran has taken a, quote, significant step towards meeting its nuclear commitments. A ship carrying more than 11,000 kilograms of low-enriched uranium materials left Iran for Russia on Monday, an Iranian step towards honoring the nuclear deal with major powers. A key provision of the agreement, negotiated by Iran with the United States, Britain, China, France, Russia, and Germany, is Tehran's commitment to reduce its stockpile of low-enriched uranium to below 300 kilograms.
Iran is taking the steps it committed to take to prove to the world its nuclear program is and will remain exclusively peaceful. And while we're not yet at implementation day, the steps already taken have made us and our allies safer in concrete and measurable ways. And this shipment alone more than triples our previous 2 to 3 month estimated breakout time for Iran to acquire enough weapon-grade uranium for one weapon.
Implementation Day refers to the date when the International Atomic Energy Agency, the Vienna-based UN nuclear watchdog, confirms Iran has taken a series of steps to curb its nuclear program, paving the way for the U.S. and world powers to begin the dismantling of their program of economic sanctions against Iran. With full implementation, the nuclear deal is supposed to push Iran's breakout time to at least 1 year.
So, Dr. Emily Landau in studio with us. Dare I be optimistic? Implementation day, but here are the steps that were promised in that deal that many in Israel do not like are taking place.
Right, but I don't think anybody expected that they would not take place. We can hail this every time something happens with regard to it, and we can hail it again. But I think the best way maybe to think about this is in terms of Iran's short-term interests and its long-term interests. Its short-term interest is to get sanctions relief. And that's why they were at the table from the beginning, in order to get sanctions relief, because the biting sanctions really had an effect. And in order to get sanctions relief, the deal said it basically had to do three things. The first, to ship out low-enriched uranium and 20% enriched uranium, to remove a significant amount of centrifuges and put them in storage, and to change the configuration of the Arak reactor. So those were spelled out in the deal. Iran agreed to it, and that's the only way they're going to get sanctions relief. And they know that the international community is serious about that. So it wasn't a surprise that Iran is implementing that. But what is Iran's long-term interest? Its long-term interest is to maintain its breakout capability. And in this regard, we see other steps that Iran is taking, other problems in the deal that are enabling Iran to, in fact, maintain that capability. And that's what we need to really be concerned about and to worry about. For example, the ballistic missile tests. The 2 ballistic missile tests, October and November. Ballistic missiles, a new type of ballistic missile, precision guided, very accurate, can carry a nuclear payload. Why in the world is Iran continuing to develop these missiles, delivery mechanism for nuclear weapons, And you know, there's no consequences. Not only that, the U.S. administration is very careful to say, you know, yes, this is a violation of UN Security Council resolution, but not of the Iran deal. So, you know, that's a problem. Within the deal, there are the other problems that we've talked about endlessly. The verification mechanism that's weak, that will not enable entry into military facilities. Big problem. The sunset provision, the fact that whatever restrictions are on Iran will end in 10 to 15 years. And these are things that will these are the building blocks for Iran to maintain breakout capability.
The hope that in 10 to 15 years, possibly because of the sanction lifting and the fact that, and I'm assuming, I'm now playing devil's advocate on the American administration psyche, that within 10 to 15 years, relations will be normalized. Iran will be taken a bit more into the fold of the Western society, so to speak, and will not want to have nuclear weapons. That's something that we do not think in the Middle East it will ever happen with a country like Iran.
You know, I think this is what the administration is hoping for. The problem is, first of all, you can't base your policy in nuclear issues on wishful thinking, or even if you have, you know, maybe some evidence to base that hope, which I'm not sure that they have. Because nuclear issues are very serious. They're irreversible. If Iran gets there, we will not be able to turn that around. The second thing is, I would like to hear what the indications are on the ground already that give us reason or cause to believe that this is likely to happen. What we see on the ground actually is the exact opposite. More Americans, you know, detained in Iran. The Washington Post reporter put in jail. As I said, the ballistic missile test, the increased presence in Syria. In other words, Iran is not giving any indication that this deal will normalize relations. We hear from Khamenei on a regular basis, we do not want improved relations with the United States. We want a nuclear deal in order to get sanctions relief. We are not interested in improved relations with the United States. So where is, you know, the wishful thinking coming from? On what is it based?
And what is it based? One can only theorize, which sadly I think in that case you're right that we're theorizing about the future. But that said, all that said, implementation day is supposed to be when? Approximately.
Well, they thought it would be around the spring. Mm-hmm. Now most assessments are talking about somewhere in late January.
In late January, which is around the corner.
And then, you know, Iran will be getting significant sanctions relief, and then we'll see what happens with that.
Okay, Emily Lando, I think you'll be joining us a lot. Thank you for being here this morning as we move along.